meaning that every one of them has been carefully judged and tested by the prison authorities and found to be absolutely trustworthy in prison. And yet one of these men is serving a life sentence as an habitual criminal. Outside, in the free world, he cannot be trusted for a moment. Inside, he can be trusted to ride the range freely without supervision, doing his job and coming back to his cell block when the job is done. The real prison for these men stretches as far as the eye can see. And yet the habitual criminal is, in a sense, penned in as tightly as if he never left his cell. For he has been judged by society to be able to make it here, but nowhere else. So this is one unwelcome thing that happens to men of widely different types in prison. They become institutionalized. Behind the bars or behind the boundaries of their institution, they are model prisoners. But remove the bars, separate them from the prison herd, and they are no good at all. Some of them learn other skills as well, skills that make it easier for them to fall when they get outside. For if you pen criminals together, they will teach each other the finer points of crime. Is there any way of preventing our prisons from becoming schools for habitual crime? We asked the convict at San Quentin.
Well, one thing I would do for the biggest thing, I wouldn't put young boys or young men in with, I hate to admit this, but I'll say with a criminal like me, a thief like me. I don't believe they have any business mixing with my type. I've done a lot of things that I'm not proud of, some that I'm very much ashamed of. And I don't think these boys and these young men, first-termers, should mingle with us, because we talk about these things. We'll tell them how to commit crimes. This is just a natural thing in prison. I just have a new cell partner. I got him about 3 or 4 days ago. And we stayed up until midnight every night talking about the papers that he's pulled, and I run down my little sins to him. Well, he's 25 years old. He's been in before, but he can be repaired. But I don't think he can be repaired here. This is the worst place. This and Folsom is the worst place they could put him. Because of his youth, and he's good looking, and he's young. And this is a bad combination.
What can you do to a man to change him for the better? These young convicts are reshaping hillsides to prevent erosion at the Ferguson Farm Unit in the Texas system. They work in highly disciplined teams.
Got along in there now. Drop down on it.
They work under the gun.
Work it out. Now carry it back. Carry it back to the bottom.
They must learn to pull together.
Straight back.
They are doing long hours of work that might be finished in half an hour with a bulldozer.
Drop it all on the ground, Ratner. Way down the ground.
On the other hand, they are making a good job of it, and in another season, they will see this eroded area green, reclaimed for grazing. There are dogs to chase any runaway and pull him down. There might be arguments about whether or not work done under the threat of guns and dogs, movements performed on the double, will have any lasting good effect. But with society's efforts at reclaiming people up to now earning such scant success, who is to say? The logical way to begin any effort at improvement would be to reach for contact in areas of a man's life where he began to go wrong. Almost all prisoners have one thing in common. They were not able or not willing to make an honest living. So it's reasonable that most prisons try to teach men to work persistently and effectively at some task that is directly useful to the institution, if not to themselves. Another thing common to most penal systems is to place increasing emphasis on training young offenders. The average age in state and federal institutions is 28, which reflects a growing population of younger inmates. And whatever the age of any inmate, 9 out of 10 will have started to move outside society, beginning to get into trouble at an early age. For a long time, the men who administer prisons have been asking a double question that springs from this fact. Why do young people go wrong, and who goes wrong? If we want to do more than just lock men up, if we want to get to them, these questions must be answered. We talked with Fred T. Wilkinson, director of the Missouri State Department of Corrections and for many years a leader in prison administration, and asked Mr. Wilkinson, what sort of person goes to jail?
I would say the person who is most likely to go to jail, this would be about 90% who go, is a person who lives across the tracks, who's really poverty-ridden and is a victim of environment. There's no question about this, and it has been far more so since the close of World War II, with the tremendous urbanization that we're going through, huge cities. People come into marginal areas, and they're living in these areas, and they have very little to do. They're not prepared to cope with these communities, and the communities are not prepared to cope with them. And so they begin, it may be a youngster who forms a pattern. If you study it, he has a gnawing belly, he's hungry, and he begins to steal. And at school, he's not to all have equal opportunity. This isn't true at all. The kid who's dirty and hungry, and going into supposedly equal there, is not going to get the equal benefit of the other fella who's well fed and who's driven to school and things like this. So eventually, this is the thing I think that leads to it. And there are lots of things in between, of course, that happen, but basically environment is the principal thing as far as I'm concerned.
This is a picture of a bird with a long neck and a round body.
So if we would help, we must begin at the beginning.
Y'all see this? This letter looks like a bird with a long neck and a round body. This is the word bird. Say bird. Bird. Say it again. Bird. Say it again. Bird.
In many places, as in this Georgia State Prison at Reidsville, it means beginning with the ABCs.
Bird. Bird.
These men have a long way to go, and yet they are among the elite of the prison population. Most of their cellmates are out working in the fields or on road gangs or the like. Sometimes inmates can teach, and very likely it helps them to help others.
Cup. This is the word cup.
So just as useful work is one step up from punitive confinement, learning is another step up from that, a step toward the goal of finding a life outside.
Now, say cup.
Who was Joan of Arc? Jimmy?
Sometimes teachers come into the prison from outside.
Tommy, who was Joan of Arc?
She was a woman that addressed to a soldier and led the French troops to a victory in Orleans.
All right, what was the name of the war?
100-Year War.
The 100-Year War. Danny?
It was difficult to learn before outside in an ordinary school. It is difficult here. Sometimes what must be learned for that vital diploma seems a long way away from this or any other life these young men have known. They have failed outside. Now they must succeed here.
Your greatest problem seems to be the reduction of improper section, where your denominator is smaller than the numerator.
Sometimes the things learned have an immediate and practical usefulness.
But you can't stop you unless you do the practicing for it.
But always the goal of re-entering society remains at the end of a scale of opportunity.
I think that privilege should be given to each man. A man ought to have a chance, if he wants it. Put him on trial basis and anything else, but give every man a chance. Because self-respect is one thing that man has got to have. Without self-respect, there's going to be a return sure does give you an insight, helps you look within yourself, you see. It opens your mind, starts you to thinking. The help that we've received out here has not been on a custodial basis. It's been more or less on a man-to-man basis. The million and one things run through your mind when you start getting ready to get out because of the situation you're placed in once you get released. See, a felony, when you walk out the door, unless you got a family or some friends, you're up the proverbial creek. And that $8 don't go far. So it does fool you sometimes. You think you hate this place. You don't want to come back. But you try living off $8 or trying to get started on a trivial amount that they try and make a man leave you with. I'm not saying it's their responsibility, you understand. But it's just impossible to do. And a man that's got no friends and nobody to go to, there's not one course of action he can follow. That's to steal again. And ultimately he's going to repay.
This building in Oakland, California, represents an attempt on the part of that state system to help ex-convicts over the difficult step to freedom. Whatever a man may have accomplished or failed to accomplish in prison, it is bound to be hard at first to walk free outside, to find a job, to start life up again. With this in mind, experiments have been launched of providing halfway houses, where an ex-prisoner must stay until he has made a start. It is different from parole, where a man is left on his own with only the duty to report regularly. The inmate of a halfway house is closer to the prison situation, in that he has to return each night to the house where he is fed and lodged. He is committed to being there, but has freedom of movement during the day. When he returns, he must sign in, listing the time and putting down as well what he has been doing during the day. Looking for work is a common entry. The experiment is new. It appears to be showing some good results. Certainly, help of any kind at this stage is needed. But it is often very hard for an ex-convict to find work. Many people do not want to trust such a man with a job, with any responsibility. Why should they? He has demonstrated himself to be irresponsible by getting into prison in the first place. He has committed one crime. Possibly he will commit another. Why take risks? And more than that, many men emerging from prison have no particular skills. That may have been what helped to put them there in the first place. Reporter Wallace talks to one halfway house inmate.
What kind of work are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for anything from ditch digger to salesman right now.
And what kind of luck are you having?
None at all.
Why not?
Well, if you put down your record, they say we'll call you, and you never hear from them. And if you lie about it, like I've done in some instances, then they wonder about the 3-year gap that I have in between jobs.
What do you think it does to people to be in prison?
Well, it does different things to different people.
What does it do to you?
Well, it made me feel guilty, of course, being there. And hostile in some respects. I was pretty mad about being locked up, and everyone else is wandering around.
Do you think you were unjustly locked up?
As far as the law is concerned, I committed a crime, and I was paying for it.
But you felt that there was an injustice in this?
Yes, I do.
In what way?
Well, for my conviction, now they're talking about cures for it rather than punishment.
What was your problem?
It was marijuana, smoking marijuana.
And that was the extent of your crime?
Well, not actually. While I was out on bail for my second possession, I burglarized the doctor's office to obtain more drugs. So that one they had me. I did something wrong there.
What kind of drugs are you looking for?
Any kind.
Why?
It gave me a good feeling. That's where I like them.
What kind of drugs have you been using?
Marijuana, stimulants, heroin, morphine.
Now, what about trying to find work? What sort of places do you look?
Just factory work, service station, odd jobs. Just look through the paper and see something and apply for it. Sometimes I tell the truth about my past. And other times I try to make up things that doesn't go against me.
Do you think being in prison does you any harm?
Yes.
What sort?
Being confined, you don't feel much like a human being after that. After you're locked in a cage for 3 years.
Of course, it used to be thought that anyone who committed a crime was dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be called dangerous. Do you think you are dangerous to society?
No.
Do you think you're a drag on society?
That's a possibility.
Can anything else be done to prevent men from being a drag on society? There is another kind of bridge between the prison and the community that is being tried in a number of places throughout the nation. It is to send convicts out from the prison by day to work and have them return at night. This man is an inmate of the Elmwood Rehabilitation Center in Santa Clara County, California. He is due for release in the near future. In the meantime, county jail administrators have found him a job outside, and every working day he goes out to perform it. He must register his time out and his expected time in. He's given a lunch to take with him.
Lunch? Yes. Okay.
Now he is in the free world on his own with a job to do and a set of rules to live by. No liquor, all money accounted for by the institution, no larking about. He is a man who has been judged capable of accepting trust and responsibility. He drives his own car to work. Santa Clara County has had inmates punching time cards outside the jail since 1957. This idea of releasing inmates to work by day was first tried in Wisconsin. It is now being tested in North Carolina, Michigan, and Maryland. The results to date are very promising. In Santa Clara County, California, nearly 2,500 inmates have taken part in the program. Less than 1% of these have yielded to temptation and wandered off, an escape record better than most lockup prisons. And the 99% who have stayed on the job have served their time and re-entered the free world with a real start. Now the Federal Bureau of Prisons has started its own work release program in 30 institutions, armed by implementing congressional legislation. In factories such as this one in Danbury, Connecticut, convicts come out to work alongside free men and women. They put their hands to new skills that will serve them in the future. They earn regular pay and send it to their families or bank it against the time they will be released. This program is not intended as a substitute for punishment. Men are not eligible for work release until they have come close to the end of their sentence, until they have proved by their work and behavior inside the prison that they deserve this new opportunity. The Federal Correctional Institution at Danbury has 70 prisoners out of a prison population of 700 working at jobs in this Connecticut community. 11 of those work here at highly skilled jobs, manufacturing components that go into air and spacecraft. How do they fit in? Do they get on with their fellow workers? Do they do a good job?
Well, I'm an inspector, and where I've had contact with them in regards to their work, they seem to have a healthy attitude. They're interested, and they try to do good work, and they take correction without any resentment or anything. They seem to have a healthy attitude towards their job.
So, for one thing, we're not confined. We're out here. We're free. We're just like any normal person out there. And, in fact, they don't even know where we're from unless we tell them. They treat us the same. Workers will try to help us. Nothing to it.
I was really surprised to find, I was working with these, the men for a couple of months before I realized they were convicts, and I didn't know it then until I was told.
They didn't seem any different.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Did it scare you when you found out?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for them.
Well, what do you think the main purpose of it is?
For the convicts to work here? Well, I feel that it gives them an opportunity to make money for their wives and children on the outside, and it helps pass their time, and it gives them the skills so they'll know something when they go on the outside.
The job has done more than help. It's given me a chance to feel like I'm contributing to my family again.
where one who's in prison gets stagnant. He feels helpless and hopeless because he just can't do anything for them. You actually feel free when you're outside, and you actually forget that you're a prisoner. This is true.
They've got to pay their punishment. That's what I figure. They've got to do that somehow. But in a way, it helps them when they do get out. I realize that.
In what way do you think these men pay their debt?
Well, they're paying it by being in, because they're not really free, even though they do come here to work. They're still not free. They still have to go back every night.
A lot of time a man does a bid, like me, for instance, 5 years. And he's been going a long time. He goes out with nothing. So what is he going to do if he can't get a job right away? So he's got to turn to crime. This way he go out and have some money, and it can last him over until he can find a job, maybe a month, 2 months. It's all depending on how long he's been on the program. So I think this is a wonderful thing.
In Danbury, we talked to Merle Alexander, director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. We asked him what general theory lies behind the changes that are taking place in prison administration.
For every person that we don't intervene in his delinquent career, we have a person who is not going to produce in society. He's not going to pay taxes. He's going to infect the community in terms of his associations with other people. And this becomes the new critical, important role of the prison, is to carry out the order of the court in confining him in an institution, keeping him from his liberty, and then gradually restore him to liberty. There is plenty of punishment in being sentenced to a prison and taken from your family and normal life and placed behind walls.
Is it true that no longer in modern penology the directors are guided by the old phrase that he who sins must suffer?
Well, it's quite true that this alone, in terms of purely punitive, retributive kinds of mass repression in prisons, is being abandoned gradually by the part of prison directors throughout the country, and indeed throughout much of the world, because it hasn't paid off, because we haven't been able to demonstrate that repressive measures, or the lash, or physical punishment, or whatever this is, pays off. It tends to embitter, and it tends to confirm criminality. Just as the kind of an institution in which you have mass idleness. I visited an institution not long ago in which over 1,000 men out of 3,200 were unemployed. They had no employment. They had no factories. They had no training. And in a cell house with 600 men confined in cells all day long, with guards patrolling the corridors, smoke, talk of sex, and crime. This is easy. This confirms criminality. You and I, living 2 or 3 years under those conditions, wouldn't be the same kind of people. How could we be useful, contributing kinds of citizens? We've tried now for 100 years to lock people up and hold them, and when the sentence is up, turn them loose. This hasn't worked. The rate of recidivism in the country is now 50 or 60%. Upwards of 3/4 of all crime committed is committed by people who have already been in prison or in probation or parole. And one of the critical steps now being taken is to extend the control and supervision of the prison toward the community, providing very, very close, gradual supervision and release, on the hypothesis that this breakdown, which has occurred repeatedly, can be prevented through the kinds of methods now being used.
What have we discovered? Men are in prison because they have committed offenses against society for which society demands they be punished. Within every prison population, there will emerge a percentage of inmates who may merit and profit by exceptional privilege, who may go out into the world, as these men are doing, mingle with free men, learn and grow, and who may carry back with them the benefits they have gained. We have seen as well that there are men who seem to be beyond the reach of any efforts to correct them, who must be isolated because they are dangerous, not only to their fellow man, but even to their fellow prisoner. We have learned that there are gradations up from this, to useful work, to privileges inside the prison that may give men motivation. There is education that can be given, skills that can be taught. We have learned, in short, that there are potentially stages within a prison system that reach upward from total failure through degrees of partial and tentative success in changing a man, to the point where some can be equipped to re-enter society. Since most of the convicts now behind bars are going to emerge one day, changed or not, it would seem that our interests demand that as much as possible be done to change the men who can be changed and protect us from those who cannot.
It is obvious that many of the men who run our penal system are well ahead of the public in their dissatisfaction with the way that system has been run. New ideas are being tried, and this is a healthy sign. But if the system is ever to be brought closer to the community, clearly the community must be prepared to give. Give sympathy, give understanding, give material help. For the basic goal is obvious: the improvement of society itself. Roger Mudd for CBS Reports. Good night.